All right, that marks the end of the coffee break. Welcome, everyone. Have you ever heard this? Or this is something that I've heard. I go around coaching teams and they excuse themselves that their board doesn't look like any other board. This one I've actually heard twice, both in 2008 and in 2018. Or even this, have you heard this? Agile, yeah, we used to do that back in the 80s. No, you didn't, because then I would have heard about you. Or this one. No, you can't do that. It says clearly in the documentation that you can only have one release-trained engineer. All of these are examples of people that don't understand the principles of Agile and are following the practices of Agile. But I'm here to preach freedom. I'm here to preach freedom from the yoke of yet another methodology, or the oppression of meaningless rituals, or the slavery of following rules. But if you just do that, if you just start to do whatever you want, it's not really cool. This is my favorite quote by President Obama. It's not cool to not knowing what you're talking about. So you need to understand the principles before you can start to break the practices. So that's what we're going to talk about, that principles are much more important than practices. And I will give you some tools, some practices to help you find the principles, in fact. So my name is Marcus Hammarberg. I have been a developer for a very, very long time. I've also been a consultant and an Agile coach. As I said, I've been a developer for a long time. This is my first CV, actually, back in the day. I speak mostly about things lean and agile. And when I don't do that, I care about my family, my instrument. Anyone knows what this instrument is called? Not you. There's a guy that probably plays this instrument. Anyone? Oh, man. The tuba is close. Euphonium. The king of instruments. And I also care about my church, the Salvation Army. I right now work for a small data engineering firm called Skling. And this is where I do most of my work with my coworkers. These are two of the best books I've written on Kanban. So I can highly recommend them. And I also have a prize here for the first/best question, whichever comes first. I'll decide at the end, okay? So please ask me questions. We'll try to keep it short in the talk because there's limited time. Okay, so what is a practice even? Or in Swedish, do you know the word for practice in Swedish? I had to look it up. I didn't know it. It's praxis, which is probably Latin, I think. So that's like how you do something, what you do with your hand. But the principle is much more important. It's about why you do something. And if you start to do something, just do it without knowing why, disaster can follow. So that is a really good thing to know about. Anyone from Øredev in here? Okay, good. Then I can say I was a little bit surprised when they accepted this talk. Because this is not news anymore. It's old, actually. And it's even been written about in Forbes, understanding fake Agile. And there's been other talks about this exact thing that I'm talking about, that tries to skip frameworks altogether. All of these things are about understanding the principles before you apply the practices. And why is that important? Well, I'm going to steal a framework from a man called David Snowden, and it's called Kinevin. And Kinevin is a framework to make sense of problems. So it's about applying the right solution to the right problem. And we'll use that as a little guiding thing here. And it has four areas here. It's not a four-fielder, so he's super clear about that. But down in that corner, we have the clear domain. So these are problems where it's very obvious what's happened. So you start the car, or you try to start the car, it doesn't start, and you see that there's no gas in the car, or it's no charge. Easy, we can just charge it. So as you can see here, we have to understand, sense what happens, we categorize the problem, and we just do what needs to be done. Typically, there's a best practice here. So there is one way of doing it that is best. If we go up here, we come to the complicated domain. And this would be like the car doesn't start, but there's no obvious reason as to why. Typically, where I spend most of my time when it comes to cars, the only thing I could really fix with a car is if I pop the hood and there's a huge on-off switch in off position, then I could fix that. Otherwise, I need to take help from someone, like a mechanic, that can actually diagnose the problem and then apply the correct solution. So here we have sense, and then analyze, and then respond. And here there might be several best practices. So there's no best practice, there's several good practices here to solve the problem. If we go over to the scary side here, we end up in the complex domain. So the complex domain would be like going into a car crash situation. You couldn't say beforehand how you got out of it unscathed, but afterwards you could describe it. So you would say like, yeah, you know what, it was really something pure luck, because what happened was that I first braked, then I went left, but I should have gone right, so I changed my mind and then went right, and that was good because I missed the car and then I came out of it without that. No one could describe that on beforehand. Another domain where this would be, where we would be in the complex domain would be, for example, trying to win a market, trying to launch a new app, trying to do something in a very new way. That leaves this little area, this area down here, the chaotic domain. Oh, sorry, I should say that as well. So what we need to do here is to try something, see what happened, and then respond. So we don't know what the problem is on beforehand. We just try something, see what happens, and then respond. Maybe do more of it, or maybe do something else. The chaotic domain, here's problems for real. There's one slide more, by the way, so don't photo it yet. This is where we are in an emergency. So this would be inside the car accident, right? When you're actually in the problem domain. So it doesn't really matter. You just do something and see what happens, basically. The good thing about this is that it will be over quickly. The downside is that it will not always be to your advantage. Something bad might happen. But as I said, here's where we just do something whatever and see what happens, and then see if that was good or not. And it's a novel practice here. So here we're trying things that no one ever had tried before. And that leaves this part in the middle here. Now you can take photos. So that part in the middle is actually not uncommon. It's when we don't know which domain we are in. So as you can see, applying a best practice to a complex domain would not be really good. So we are at the Software Developer Conference. What do you think software development is all about? What kind of domain are we in? Or let me ask you this, let me tell you a story. Or this is a thought experiment. Think about the last project that you were in. Let's say that it took you a year to complete. And then one day you come to work and it looks like this. So the whole thing, the whole house and everything that you have done is just sucked into this hole. This is a real picture, by the way. It scares me. So there's not, because that's a man, okay? So there's nothing left. So the company says, okay, do it again. Will it go faster or slower? It will go faster. Why? Because now we know what to do, right? Here's the scary thing. If the same things happen after you've done it, most people guess that it takes like half the time. So after 6 months, if the same thing happens again and you get to do it again, will it go faster or slower? Faster, because you learned again. So we are in the complex or complicated domain. There are no best practices. There might be good practices, but there are no best practices for things that we do. Because if there are, let's buy it instead. Don't build it if there already exists a solution to this problem. Everything that we do has never been done before, at least not in this domain at this company with the tools that we're working with. It's not like we're inventing a cure for cancer or anything like that. Don't get over yourself. But still, we need to discover, we need to ensure that the process that we are working with helps us discovering things at first. So there are no really good best practices. This is a question that I've asked many companies where I get to coach. If this company was 100% better in a year, or if this team was 100% better in a year, how would you see that? How would we notice? And you know what? I've never got any good answers. People don't know this. Yeah, for example, right? That would be a great answer. Happy developers. I once asked this to the management team for an entire company, and the answer was, it depends on who of us you ask. It's scary. That's scary. So what we do instead is that we're applying practices. We're saying things like everyone should work with Scrum. Really? Is that good? Would that help whatever we're trying to achieve? Or we're saying this is the tool set that you need to work. Everything should be written in JavaScript. Okay, but what are we even trying to achieve? At that same company, I actually almost got thrown out when I said to the developers that I don't want you to develop anything if you don't know the answer to this question. Standstill. Total standstill at the company because they have never talked about this. I think the answer to questions like these, it doesn't have to be this exact question, is important. I had a little bit of a revelation many years ago now when I realized that there's a huge difference between manufacturing and developing. So manufacturing means that we're doing the same thing many, many times over. So we're building many copies of this. Developing means that we're inventing a new this. We are software developers, right? We're not software manufacturers. There's very different types of ideas that should be applied to software development. I've never even met a software manufacturer, actually. Have you? No? I once met a software constructor. That team got their specifications in pseudocode in Swedish, so that would be probably the closest things I've ever seen. All right, so what should we do then? Well, it turns out a long, long time ago now, there are probably people in the there are probably people in the room that was not even born at this time. This is 2001. A group of bearded men, that was the rule, gathered and decided a few of these principles. Anyone doesn't know, who has not visited this webpage or have seen this? Yeah. There are a few people. Yeah, I kind of thought so. No worries, that you don't have to. It's not mandatory. But this is Agile. If anyone asks you what is Agile, this is Agile. Full stop. So see here that they say, first of all, I love this first sentence, we are uncovering better ways of developing. They met 15 years later and decided to not change this because they are still uncovering better ways, right? And they do that by prioritizing individuals and interactions over processes and tools. Working software over comprehensive documentation. Not, we don't do documentation. This is more important than that. Customer collaboration over contract negotiation. Responding to change over following a plan. Anyone in here that ever got less budget one year because you didn't use up the budget from the previous year? Right? Me too. That's being measured on how well did you follow the plan, not how much value did you deliver. Okay, as I said, this is like 2001, so someone whose name I don't dare pronounce made an updated version of this called Modern Agile. What does that say? Make people awesome, delivered value constantly, make safety a prerequisite, psychological safety, but also physical safety and stuff like that. Experiment and learn rapidly. So this would be like this expressing this old thing in a new language. And so thank you for coming. So everyone, there's a little bit more. If you squint your eyes and look at this, there's something missing from this picture. If I gave this to a new team and say, okay, go on and be awesome, the first question they would ask or should ask is, how? It doesn't say anything about how. It's just some values or ideas about how to do that. And that's great because there are some principles in there. The Agile Manifesto have 12 principles that very few people have actually read that are awesome. I encourage you to read them. But it doesn't really help us in knowing what to do now. Should we stand? Do we sit down, stand up? What should we do? Do we need a board? Do we not need a board? So we need a way to get from these principles to these practices. And it turns out that a good way of doing that is to do something and then learn from that and understand the principles a little bit better. And here I'm stealing from one of my favorite teachers that I think that many of you know, Mr. Miyagi. This is also dated now. I feel very old, actually. But this is an old movie where he gets to learn karate by polishing his cars. So he's just saying, like, do this, and you will end up with this, I promise you. So at the end, he actually wins by learning karate from polishing the cars. So I wanted to teach you 4 very simple practices that will help you understand the Agile principles, or at least help you start to think about these Agile practices. So this is my recipe for success, 4 very simple practices. First of all, start where you are, visualize, limit work in process, and help value to flow. So let's stay on each for a little bit. A man walks up to a taxi driver in London and he says, how do I get from here to Piccadilly Circus? And the taxi driver responds, that is really hard. I wouldn't start from here. Yeah, that's stupid, right? But what do? Okay, everyone, it's Scrum from now on. You're the Scrum Master, you're the product owner, and the rest of you are the team. So what should we do now? How should that change the way that I cooperate? Because what I just did was that I changed everything. Right? I started you off at a position where you were not. So this recipe that I'm going through now has a superpower, and that is that you don't need to change anything. You can start tomorrow or today if you go home early. I wouldn't recommend it. And you can follow this pattern, these practices, and you will get value out of it tomorrow. I promise you. Don't change a thing. That's the rule of number 1. So don't change anything. Start where you are. Visualize. If someone walks into your office, how would they see if you are super busy? Or how would they see everything that you completed yesterday? They won't, right? Because our work happens in here. Most of the work happens in here. Some of it happens in the computer as well. But what do we even deliver? Right? Bits on disk somewhere in the cloud. As my mother-in-law once said, you're not doing anything. No, exactly. Right? So what we need to do is take stuff out of our heads and make it visual so that we can actually see it. For example, like this. Tomorrow, my good friend Vasco will hold a talk on no backlogs. This is our backlog, or was our backlog back in the day. Yeah, Q1 2014. So what we did was that we made the backlog super visual. Here's a little man at work. Did I? Yeah, okay. So there's a little man at work symbol here. So this is where we're working. We're marking off features here. And over there you can see a little cute dragon. We are scared about this thing, whatever that could be. This is, here's the man at work symbol. So what we did was that we showed everyone what we are doing right now. So, and we actually invited the management team from the entire company into the room, and we had a litmus test. We said, tell us how we're doing. And we just put them in front of the board. And they could actually tell us how we were doing, because they could see what we had done and what we have not done and where we were spending our time and everything like that. They could even tell us, oh, don't do that. We want you to work over here instead. Perfect. Thank you. Now we could see the work. Okay, so don't change anything. Just make your work visible so that you can actually see what you are doing and what other people are doing. We haven't changed anything yet, right? And now limit work in process or work in progress. And if I had a lot of time here, I would bring someone up on stage and do a little exercise, but we have little time, so I'm gonna let my computer do this instead. And what I wanted this person to do is to help me to fulfill 3 projects. I want you to write, oh no, don't start yet. Okay, good. I want you to write with the blue pen, the letters A to J in a nice column like that. And with the red pen, Roman numbers 1 to X. And with the black pen, Arabic numbers 1 to 10. Here's the thing though, we are super busy, so I want you to focus on all projects at once. So I want you to do it row by row like this, as we are super busy, right? So all projects are important, let's go. So let's see how that looks. The clock here is actually ticking down like transitions. Yeah, so this poor schmuck had to move the pen and put the pen back and take the cap off, and you see that it feels super annoying. He even had to stop to think for a while there. And then after a little bit, he's done, and it looks like this, and this is how long it took him to complete. So typically what happens if someone, not a computer, does this is that halfway through the alphabet, they will be like, A, B, C, D, F, yeah, okay. And here people typically mess things up here, I do at least. And that's because we're doing something called context switching, right? So it's actually hard to think first in letters and then in Roman numerals and switch your brain between that. Here's the thing though, I was lying. The first project here is actually the most important project, so I really want you to focus on that first, and then you can do the second project, and the third project was just because I thought it was fun. So let's do that again. You can play this with your spouses at home, they will love it. Let's do it again, but now focus on one project at a time. So first do A then. Okay, let's see that in action then. Uh-oh, come on, network. So I've seen very few people stop midst lettering like that. Boom. So very few people have to stop to think what comes after F when they are writing the letter after F, after E, right? Because they have that in their head, right? They are doing only that thing. They have now limited the number of things that they are working on at the same time to 1, right? So let's take a look at the times. Oh, before we do that, do you agree with me that the same amount of work has been completed? And we are working in the same way. We are working with the same pens. We are working with the same whiteboard, and it's even the same person doing the work. Let's take a look at the total time. 1:30 compared to 34. Just by working differently. That's amazing. We cut it in a third, basically. But what really amazes me is this time here. So remember that I said that this project is actually the most important one here. And at this point, it's completed after 12 seconds. Here, it's completed after 1:24. I can't even count the percentage improvement there. Why? Because we punished the blue project by doing the red and the black project at the same time. How many things do you do at the same time at work? Right? How many projects does your company work with? Is your team involved in more than one thing? Right? We are punishing ourselves by working in that way. I'm not saying that one is the solution because it starts to ask a lot of very interesting questions, but let's play with the idea for a while. Let's say that your team only worked with one thing. Would that be a big thing? Would you say like, yeah, we're going to work with this within 2 years and then we come back to you? No one would ever accept that. You have to do it smaller now because you need to pick again, right? So we're going to work with this in 2 weeks and then we come back to you. Good. And that's actually a third thing that has happened here that is a little bit invisible and hard to see. What if someone said in the first round here, when you were halfway through the work, said, you know what, we need to reprioritize. In the first round, we would be here, and we would have 3 half-finished products. In the second round, something amazing happens, because between the projects, we get an opportunity to pick again, to reprioritize, to change. That is Agile. Being able to be Agile. Having an opportunity to reprioritize. Maybe we learned something. Hey, you know what? The blue thing was really good. Let's make the other letters in the blue project as well. Or, great, now do the black thing here. Imagine this. Imagine I actually done this once. He was not happy. Imagine that I said halfway through, oh, you know what? I want you to do yet another project, write 10 to 1. In the first round, that would wreak havoc with your brain. I did that to myself first as well, and it's really, really hard. In the second round, you would be here, and you could say things like, you know what? Give me 3 seconds more. I finish this, and then we can reprioritize. All of these opportunities comes from a simple fact, and that is that we are limiting the number of things we are working with at the same time. Interestingly enough, we haven't changed anything. We just put a limit on how many things we are working with at the same time. So now we come to the last part here, help value to flow. And I got good news and bad news. This is where we will spend the rest of our lives. And the remainder of this lecture as well. So we don't have to stay for that long if you don't want to. Because if we don't change anything and we just make work visual and put a limit on the number of things we are doing, you will see all the problems that you have in your organization really fast. But it's not until you act on that feedback that you actually get some value out of doing this. So you will just get the pain, but no gain. Right? That is like me on the treadmill. I don't like that. So now we need to help the value to flow. And what this sentence needs to be unpacked, what value and flow. And I think the easiest way to do that is for me to do a 5-minute introduction to what is lean. And to be honest, it's not me. There's an awesome book by 2 guys from Handelshögskolan in Stockholm called Niklas Modig and Per Åhlström, This is Lean. And I suggest anyone that attends this to read this book. So I'm going to tell you a story. A couple of years ago, I woke up one morning, I had severe toothache. So I went to the emergency dentist and they told me like, yeah, you know, you did a root canal a couple of years ago and it's gone bad. You need to redo it. I was in pain, not screaming, but still. So I just said, okay, let's do it. That's not so easy, you know. You have a crown on top now, so we need to drill through the crown, and that requires a specialist specialist drill and all of those things. So you should call Torbjörn. I live in Stockholm. When they name a dentist by name, that's when you get worried, okay? So I called Torbjörn and I said, Torbjörn, please help me, I'm in pain. And he said, no worries, I'll help you. Actually, his secretary said, we'll help you. Okay, let's do it as fast as possible. And then I heard like, let's look. And oh no. So this was in February, like 12th or something like that. And they said, yeah, we have a time in the morning of the 5th of May. How does that sound? Sounds painful. So I was actually on painkillers for all that time and anti-inflammatory. And then I came there. I came early, and I got to wait. And I saw that they had 3 secretaries, and I just asked. I had to ask, right? I'm a process geek, so I just had to ask them. So 3 months waiting time. How do you feel about that? Well, you know what? This is true. They said, you know what? Soon it will be 4. And I said, what? They were super proud. Our entire work here, they said, is about making sure that we have a packed schedule. And I saw it in action because someone called in and said that they were sick, I can't come. So then they started to phone other people and gave them half price if they came early, right? So everything they did here was in order to make sure that Torbjörn was busy. In fact, I got in to the dentist, and of course I didn't meet the dentist. I met a nurse, and she gave me anesthetics, and then Torbjörn came in so that he basically just walked in and started to drill, right? So I asked Torbjörn, like, why do you do this? It's painful, man, and the drilling as well, but it's painful waiting like this. And he told me, like, if I'm not working 1 hour for a week, we lost money that week. So everything was about making sure that Torbjörn was busy. And how do you do that? Have a long queue in front of Torbjörn, right? So who paid the price? The customers. Okay, let's go down to the other end here. Here's the fire department. What does firemen do when they're not putting out fires? Yeah, exactly. They don't do nothing. They just sit around waiting, maybe play some hockey or some innebandy or something like that. No, they don't. I actually once cracked this joke when there was a fireman in the audience. If you're going to make someone angry, don't make firemen angry, okay? They don't like that. I think I said that they were posing for calendars as well, but yeah. All right. So no, they are doing less prioritized work. Okay, so they are maybe taking care of their equipment, doing preventive work, and all of those things. Interestingly enough, though, they can let all of that go if a fire happens. So that's interesting, right? Another thing that is super interesting is that we have many, many more firemen than we need to put out all the fires that happen right now. There's an enormous overcapacity of firemen. And why is that? Well, you don't want to call the fire department and ask, hey, there's a fire and here, yeah, let's see here, Thursday, would that be okay? No, they have to be able to go now, right? Even, interestingly enough, even if they just went. So there's a very elaborate scheme in planning and organization for how fire department cover for each other. So if the fire department that covers this area is busy, another one will fill in, right? And we can do that because we have an enormous overcapacity. And why do we do that? Well, here the flow of value, or the value that they are putting out fire, that value is important for us. It's super important. You can see this in any place where you have high risk. So monitoring a nuclear plant, for example. There will be many more people monitoring there, and the best day, nothing happened, right? That would be an awesome day at work. Anyone done mob programming here? Mob programming, that is stupid, right? Mob programming means that we have 4 or 5 people scoring really low here, working on one thing. Well, it turns out that that's the fastest way to get the feature out, because what happens with mob programming is that you have everyone working with one thing. They are all in the same room. They are all focusing on one thing. So if you need something to if you need anything, a question or anything like that, everyone is there and focused on the thing. So you can't go faster. Let's fill this 4-fielder out. No one has anything to do and nothing gets done. That's the desert. I think I worked there actually. And up here, we're only doing value stuff, and the thing that we are doing, everyone is fully busy. So that would be some kind of nirvana state, right? So now, I think, let's see, I just converted these slides. No, I couldn't. So what is lean? Well, lean is trying to get here where everyone is utilized to the max and they are only doing valuable work by taking this route, going that way, not that way. You could do that as well. That would be like the Soviet Union 5-year plan, a factory only making left shoes kind of setup. I actually once presented this when Niklas Modig was in the audience, scary. And he stopped me here and he said, think about another thing, Marcus. What if you're 100% utilized? That's not the goal. If you're 100% utilized, everything you do will distract from that. Remember Torbjörn? He came in, he couldn't even go on a coffee break, right? If Torbjörn went on a course to learn something new, that would be disastrous for their bottom line that week. You can't answer questions, you can't even be nice. So utilizing 100% is not a good idea. Anyone ever heard this? So how many percent are you working in this project? Oh, 60, great, because I have 2 other projects where I want you to work 20% each. Where are we focusing now? Here, we're focusing here. I actually left an assignment because of disagreement with the CEO here. And he said, are you the guy that goes around and telling people that it's not important, that I have things to do? Yes, I am that guy, I said. Well, maybe we should find another consultant. Because it's not important. If you're over here, you need Slack in order to deliver this as fast as possible. You need someone to be able to help you. Focusing to keep everyone busy is not important. All right, don't change anything. Make the work visual, put the limit in the process, and then help the value to flow. And here's where we change everything as fast as possible, but in small steps. So let's, oh, by the way, this is the Kanban method, if you ever heard about that. Let's try it. And I'm going to try it by showing you a picture that I've been showing for more than 15 years now. Are you ready? I have a 2-hour lecture that is only this picture. Okay. Okay, how much value is delivered here? Very little, right? Yeah. So can anyone come up with a good solution to this problem? Come on. Another donkey? Okay, good.
Have a man pull the donkey down.
Pull the donkey down, yeah. I've also heard put longer, whatever they are called, on the trolley. Yeah. 4 wheels, yeah. Great. Can anyone come up with a cheap way of solving this? Remove something, yeah, thank you. Much cheaper, much easier. Right? Limit the working process. Interestingly enough, even though I'm in a room full of Agile practitioners, we always go for the other solution. I'll get back to that later. All right, cool. We're going to remove something. Which? Whoa. The last one, the heaviest. I happen to know that this one is gold. I happen to know that this one is very important. Right? So see what happened here? We introduced a limit, and all of a sudden we start to ask questions about prioritization. That prioritization existed before, we just didn't see it. So by putting in a limit, we actually see prioritization much more clearly. Okay. So speaking of limit, what should the limit be? How many should we take off? Until the donkey. Let me rephrase the question. Who knows when we have enough? The donkey, right? If the donkey, thank you. You have kids, my friend? They would say that directly, right? So the donkey knows. Who knows? And what is enough? So, I mean, if we just take on 1 or 2, his hoof would touch the ground, but every step he would still be like floating through the air. And if there's a downhill, he would go up again. So he would say like, dude, you need to take off more. So we're going to take off quite a lot of bags, right? Because otherwise this problem will be really, really hard to solve. And that means that we need to go many, many more ways back and forth. Maybe we'll learn something on the way. Do you know, I actually used to live, this book is written in a country where I've seen this. I didn't take a photo of it, but do you know how they do solve this problem? They put bags on the donkey. Yeah, I was waiting for that. Every time I've shown this picture now, as I said, more than 15 years. And every time I show it, the same things happens. The first thing is that everyone starts to laugh. And I understand that it's an objectively funny picture. Second is that we all come up with ideas of solving this that doesn't involve limiting working process. Thirdly is that when I tell people that they put bags on the donkey, we also laugh, and then I hear, why is that? Yeah, because if we do that, we are burning the poor donkey out. And I'm one of the people that burned out in this industry, right? So I took on too much work. It was me that took on too much work for myself. And it took me 3 years to get back. So pushing work onto someone else has deadly disasters, deadly effects, right? Because what can happen is that the donkey will die faster, which they don't care about. They will just buy a new donkey. So I'm sure that we're not doing that to people, right? We do. We do. So that's why it's important, thank you, my friend, to let the donkey decide. So put in a system where the donkey pulls in work to the capacity that he thinks that he has. So the team needs to decide what is a suitable limit for them. What did we do now? Visualize. We saw the work. We started where we were. We started where we are. Visualized, see the work, because the work is here. We also limited work in process, and we were focusing on getting work to flow, right? We could have just pushed the donkey down and taken longer time for him to work, but we were focusing on getting those particular bags that were important to the end customer. So we were now applying these simple practices, and by doing that, we started to learn about the principles. And you will see this in soon. I'm running out of time now, so I will go a little bit faster. This is a 2-hour lecture that I'm squeezing in. This is something that we're talking about a lot in our industry. We want autonomous teams. Great. How will they operate? Who will decide? Who prioritizes? Where is that prioritization made? Who sets the work in process limit? What does the other leaders do? So see, by just saying this, saying that we want this, but just starting that practice, we raise a number of questions that needs answering. So instead, starting in the place where we want to deliver value first, we might end up in a place like this. The Spotify model. Who hasn't heard about the Spotify model? Okay, thank you. And the Spotify model was a way that Spotify worked for 3 years. But it was so nice and so well written and so well described that everyone started to work this. I actually got to travel to China because I consulted with Spotify once. And then they said, you probably know why you're here. And I was like, yeah, no. Yeah, because we want to know about the Spotify model. Is that what you need? Is the Spotify model actually something that you will need? At the time, they worked for it with 3 years, and at the time, they were running with a loss because they were not interested in making money. They were interested in growing. Are you that company? Then they changed, of course, because they are an agile company. So they were looking for value, and they changed, and they changed, and they changed, and I don't even know what they're doing anymore. Should we scale up or scale out? So should we make more features, or should we make more teams that make more features? One thing that I've noticed is that we very, very easily fall into a place where we think that we just need to make everything bigger. And we often do that by sacrificing the agile principles. I'm not even gonna stop here, but this is a thing that is packed with good intentions and principles, practices, but very few people focus here. This is the real value of SAFe. That's like first half day of the course. You need to understand this, and everyone in here need to understand this before you can jump in here. And you know what? You can hire a SAFe consultant to help you. Have you ever heard about this? Fail fast. Yeah, fail fast is for suckers. Learn fast. That's important. If you learn by failing, great. But just failing, don't do that, right? Not even fast, okay? So we seldom, we're laughing, right? We seldom talk about this. It's really interesting to me. We talk about failing fast because it's catchy. But Agile is all about learning. So create a process where you learn fast. That's the important thing. And start with why. Start asking why. If we were 100% better in a year, how would you see that? So it's much easier and much more important to scale, if you want to scale Agile, to scale principles. Get everyone to understand the same principles, because they are pretty easy to understand. Not scaling the practices, because scaling practices will inevitably end up in a place where you're actually making sacrifices on what the principles of Agile is and how you do it. So instead, make sure that everyone understands the principles, and then the practices doesn't really matter, because it's just what we're doing right now, because we're in the complex or complicated domain. So we need to innovate the practices anyway. And with that, my talk is over. Thank you so much for listening.